Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Track. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have with us today Jonna Mendez, and you obviously have read about her, so that's why you know how awesome she is. I've been a fan of her videos for years as well. Don't let her off the stage before she tells you who the person in the first picture is. Please welcome Jonna Mendez.
Well, thank you, Angie. And thanks to all of you for showing up. I thought after that parade, everybody would be kicking back somewhere with something cold to drink and, relaxing like I did. By the way, that's one of the best parades I ever saw. And I've done Comic-Con 3 times. You guys are raising the bar here. It was unexpected and it was wonderful. Just great costumes. So much creativity. And I come from a really creative place. I was a photographer before I joined the CIA, just an amateur photographer. My husband-to-be, Tony Mendez, joined CIA as an artist. He was a painter. They hired him as a counterfeiter forger, put a little twist to his skills. My stepson is a sculptor, nationally known, internationally known, big bronze sculptures of everyone. And the youngest son is a musician, Jesse Mendez. You can find him everywhere on your places where you get your music. So there's an artistic thing going on here, and the creativity at Dragon Con struck a nerve, and I'm going to be telling everybody about it when I get back home. This first picture, I just have to tell you because I usually forget to tell people who it is. That's me. That was me in Washington, D.C. This was some years ago, we were doing an exercise with the FBI, a training exercise. We were training them. It was all about surveillance. The setup was that my husband and I were supposed to we had a dossier and we were going to pass it to a terrorist in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. That's all the FBI knew. And their job on nationally televised TV was to follow us and to capture the moment when we made the transfer. And so, of course, Tony and I planned our part of this very carefully. It's the FBI, and we know those guys, and we know how they think, and we know what they do. And we knew from the beginning that they would assume that Tony had the football, as he put it, that he had the dossier, that he was the target, and I was the wife accompanying him. And so, of course, we switched it off and turned me into an old guy who nobody's interested in old men. And if there's an old man here in the room, I'm sorry, but you know what I'm saying is true. They're also not interested in old women. But I was an old man this day, and so I had the dossier. It was really good. The mustache was great. I was smoking that cigar. It took days to get that taste out of my mouth. I went into, it was Dina DeLuca then. I sat down, I passed the document across the table to the terrorist. It was a film crew, PBS, because that's who was filming it, to film that moment. That was the end of the show. That was like, they got away with it. And after I did that, there was a producer in the back of the room. She stood up. She said, "Stop, stop." And all the people just having tea and cakes and things are looking. She said, "We have to shoot that again." She said, the film crew that was waiting in the bushes outside of Dean and DeLuca for when I walked in so they could film it, well, they missed me. They never knew I was there. We had to reenact the whole thing. Anyway, I like the picture, and that's why you have to look at it with me. So this is supposed to be a talk about my new book called In True Face. It's a story of my career at the CIA, 27 years. When I started telling this story, actually, I thought I was finished initially. I turned it into my publisher, and she said, hold on. This story's bigger than you, Jonna, and it's bigger than your career. You need to back up a little, and let's enlarge it. And so now it has a little subtitle, and it says, A Woman's Life in the CIA. We talk in here about not just me, mostly me, it's my book, but we also include other women and how things have gone for all of them. When we got done with it, it's a different book that I thought the CIA would just not like at all. I expected them to pull out their Sharpies but they did not. They put them back in the holster, and they actually have supported this book the whole time it's out. I'm impressed. I'm amazed. I spent most of my career doing disguise and photography. But I would tell you at the beginning that I went into the CIA through a side door. I was brought into CIA as the wife of an undercover officer. People say, how do you get hired? I say, I really don't know. I married one, and it turned out really well. But we were overseas. They need secretaries. They need file clerks. They hired me as a secretary. I am a really good secretary, or I was. When we came home, I very quickly became the top secretary in this office I worked in. There were 1,000 people in that office. It was the queue, just like in the James Bond movies. Now, you're a different demographic than I usually talk to. How many of you in here even have seen a James Bond movie? Oh, you're my people. I love this. Okay, we were queue. We made, pardon? It's Dragon Con. You damn betcha. Comic Con, they don't know. So what we did is made the toys for James. And when I say James, in this whole talk, I'm talking about all of them. I'm not picking one out in particular. But in fact, we had our reservations about James. The technical piece of us did. We didn't think he was up to our equipment. We didn't think he would remember how to use it, how it worked. The operating manual, he would never read it. He was going to break it. He was probably going to leave it on a subway somewhere. And so a lot of my job over the years was going with James wherever he was. If he was in Cairo, or if he was in Beijing, or Havana, or some of my favorite places here, or Dhaka, we were pretty much there with him and with his equipment. I got really bored being a secretary, and I talked to my boss, the director of that office, and I said, I can see the Smithsonian Castle from my window, and it looks interesting to me. I think I want to go talk to them about a job. He said, hold on. What, you don't like being a secretary? He said, we can do something else. Take some of our photo courses. And so I did. I was already very interested in photography. The first course I took in photography was called Airborne Platforms. They took me to a little landing strip outside of Washington, not at the farm, but close. And they had an airplane waiting for me, a twin-engine plane. They had taken the doors off. There was a harness in the back, just one, just for me, just hanging, there was a Madonna-like microphone. And they gave me a 35 millimeter film camera with a 1,000 millimeter lens, which back then was about that long. And the name of the course was Airborne Platforms. And the goal of the course was to see if you could, while you're riding in a bumpy helicopter-like plane with this lens that wants to move every minute, can you resolve the license plate on the pickup truck down below, 60 miles an hour down a dusty road? Can you do that? And I learned how to do that. That night, I'm at the farm in a huge dark room, probably about the size of this room, all with red lights, the safe lights. They've got big band music playing. I'm developing film and hanging stuff by clothespins, and I thought, okay, I'll stay. If this is what it's going to be, I would like doing this. That got me overseas to a photo lab, a big photo lab we had in Europe. But it only got me into the dark room because the guys didn't want to be in the dark room. I haven't mentioned, and I don't usually really dwell on this, it was all guys. Everywhere it was just guys. The women were secretaries. They were admin assistants. The really smart secretaries could go into intelligence analysis. That was a whole different piece of the business. The super educated ones could become up on the 7th floor, the C-suite. Women represented themselves very well up there and in the analytical piece of it. But in the day-to-day work overseas, working with foreign agents who are betraying their country to work for us and give us illegally, information, the door was closed to women. That was men's work. We all were told, you can't do that. You can't. What do you think they're going to trust you, these foreign men? They're going to trust you with their lives? Because that's very often what was on the line. Why would they trust you? The women in their countries can't, half the time, they can't even go out the door without an escort, a man. Well, we knew better, the women that were trying to break through this barrier. And in fact, over the years, we proved it to be true. On occasion, the men trusted us more than they trusted the guys that were training them. I'd gone in multiple times and retrained people. Women were perfectly capable of doing this, but I was an early arriver to that ceiling, and I had to prove myself. Now I'm going to show you just a couple of the things that we used in our queue, and I'm going to remember. Yes, I am. I said I was a photographer. You're thinking, oh, an old film camera. No, we had cameras. We had cameras. You wouldn't believe them. This is a camera. This is a KGB camera. Actually, I'm holding the actuator in my hand. The lens, the camera itself is shooting through that button above my hand. We had cameras in everything. We could put a camera in my thumb drive. We could put a camera in my lipstick. We could put a camera in a key fob. We could put a camera in a big, fat, expensive ink pen. Everywhere. We could put them in briefcases. We could put them in fake pregnancy bellies that we would give some of our women on the street, walk down the street. You know that pregnant walk? We had to teach them to do the walk. And we give them an actuator in their pocket, and they take pictures of everything. That photo business at my office was anything but a 35 millimeter camera with some film in it. And in my office, we had a saying that nothing was what it appeared to be. Why is this not working? Here's another something that is not what it appears to be. That's a one-time pad. So you're in Europe, you're receiving shortwave radio broadcasts from somewhere else in Europe, and it's just strings of numbers. Our agent would have a one-time pad, and he could conceal it wherever he wanted. This particular one was in a walnut, which I thought is great if you don't have little kids who, want a snack at 3 p.m. But basically, with a one-time pad, the code was, you could not break that code. In the Spy Museum in Washington, D.C., where I'm on the board, I'm a founding board member, we have the big boy version of this one-time pad. It was the pad that was used with the Enigma machine during the Second World War. And the Germans used it lavishly because, well, first, they were German. The same guys that build those Porsches, and such good technologists they were, but they were overconfident. In fact, the Enigma machine, if it was used correctly with a one-time pad, every time, there's a number in the Spy Museum that would span this room, and that is the numerical odds of breaking that code. It's about 40 feet long. You cannot break the code. We knew that. But the Poles caught the Germans once. One of them was lazy. Maybe he was drunk. Who knows? He once used the Enigma. He used the pad twice. He used the numbers twice. The Poles got it. They sent it to the Allies. We cracked the code of the Enigma machine. And how many of you know that for a good time towards the end of the Second World War, Winston Churchill could read the German communications. He knew where the subs were going, and he knew where the planes were going, and he knew where the bombs were dropping. And he couldn't do anything about it because if he moved people out of the way, if he reacted to it, they'd figure it out and they'd change that code again. So poor Winston Churchill to carry a load like that around. Concealment devices. In some parts of the world, but we use Russia always as the best example. We made dead drops to people. We couldn't walk up to our secret agent and hand him something. We were always followed. There was always surveillance. And if they could only find the person who was betraying Mother Russia, they would arrest him and they would kill him. So we had all kinds of schemes to get information to them impersonally. This is impersonal communications. We were always looking for, what can we put a dead drop in? What can we put down on the ground that no one will touch? I know in China we tried crushed Coke cans. Didn't work. Little kids would pick them up and run back to you like, oh my God, you forgot this precious thing. This is at the beginning of going into China. Around the world, there are things that are untouchable, and we discovered the universal truth, and that is that nobody, anywhere, no religion, no country, are you allowed to pick up a dead rat. Unless you're a dog or a wolf. And so we dipped them in Tabasco sauce, an original American recipe, Tabasco. If the Russians ever had one of our rats, they'd do a chemical analysis of the Tabasco, and they'd say, damn it, it's those Americans. Again, you can get a lot into a dead rat. You can put in some microdots, you can put in some rubles. If they were for Bob Hansen, you could put in some emeralds. You can just stuff him full of whatever, and he still looks repulsive, and he's still a dead rat. Okay, so that gives you a sense. I mean, the range of what we did was incredible. I'm not even talking about disguises. I'm not even talking about counterfeit documents. We had such a broad capability composed of people. I keep looking at the people I'm running into at Dragon Con, and I the next time I'm talking to some of the higher ups, I'm going to say, have we ever recruited down there in Atlanta? You guys are so creative. Really, your approach to a lot of these things that we were always looking for creative people. So if these strange guys wearing hats and eye patches and trench coats show up, don't blame me.
You know that there's an actual CIA person that would contact
You would not. If they were any good, you would not. They would have some story for you of who they were, usually. Now, if you go knocking on their door, if it's you going to them, that's different. Does everybody in here know Jamie Swiss? Because I'm here because of Jamie. Jamie is the one who said, come on down to Atlanta if you want to really see something fun. And I met Jamie through magic contacts out in LA. I don't know if Jamie knew before he met me that the CIA and the magic community had a little bit of a relationship going on, little backdoor sort of scenario. We discovered early on that what not magicians, but magic builders. Is there a better term, Jamie, than
No, that's right.
magic build? They build deceptions and illusions, and all of a sudden, bingo. My husband, Tony Mendez, was one of the first to jump on that particular subject. Yeah, that's what we do at CIA. We are all into deception and illusion, and of course, that's what the magic community does for a living. So this relationship that was always destined to be, we nursed it along. We went out to LA, met with a lot of magicians, watched their work, then went behind the scenes and took a look at some of the things that they were doing. Now, I give this talk to audiences that don't know anything about anything in particular. And I want to go back to that one. We went into the warehouses where they're building deceptions and illusions. The main problem here for CIA was surveillance in these authoritarian countries, where we get off the plane and they're waiting for us inside of the airport. They follow you the whole time you're there. They follow you to the airport and they wave goodbye. We usually would wave goodbye to them. And the idea was, so you're going to be surrounded by a surveillance team, a professional, really good surveillance team, and you still have work you need to do. How are you going to get away from them? How are you going to create a deception that allows you to get your job done? So this is inside the warehouses, and I don't really name the people we were working with, but they were amazing people. This is that old trick that everybody has seen. That's me in it. That's my toe. That's my hand. That's my other hand. And I show that to my civilian friends, and they look at it kind of stupidly like, what? What? Are you in that box? You can't be in that box. But I was in that box. This is less impressive, but still kind of fun. I am floating in midair. Then we turn the tables, and someone else is floating in midair, and I am holding them up. It looks like with a rope. Actually, the balloons alone would bring that rope down, just the weight of the rope. So, I'm under strict orders never to reveal the tricks of the trade that I learned out in LA, and now I have a witness over here in the front row, so I can't tell you anything about anything. But what I tell people about this particular illusion is it is so simple. That's why it works. And I would just ask you to look at what I'm sitting on and see if you can, if that makes any sense. Why in the world would I be sitting like I'm sitting? That's the secret to the illusion. And I can't explain it any further. But it's why none of us can ever figure out. Has anyone in here ever seen a magician on a stage do a trick and you go, I saw that. I know what you did. Did you ever catch a magician doing a trick?
I know what I did.
Well, maybe I'm dumb, but I have not. And the more modern ones, they just get more outrageous. Just, I don't know. It's always entertaining. Okay, I ended up being chief of disguise. That's when I left CIA. I was chief of disguise. I did not enter wanting to be chief of disguise. I entered hoping I could use my photo skills, and I did use my photo skills for about 15 years. I was there 27. 15 years I did photography. I went out to the Indian subcontinent for a summer, filling in for someone to do some photo work. And while I was there, fell in love with that part of the world. I still am in love with it. I came back to Washington and talked to my career management officer, whose name was Tony Mendez. But I wasn't married to him. I wasn't, he was just my career management officer. And I said, I'm really interested in an assignment out there. And so what they did is they kind of built a job for me, and they gave me a 2-year training course in disguise. And you're thinking, like I was, 2 years to do disguise? What is mustaches and wigs and maybe some glasses? 2 years? Oh no, 2 years is barely enough. I went ripping through the training, came out the other side. The little bit of resentment on the part of people who had spent their careers working in disguise, and there I'm shooting through, their technology. But I came out the other side of it with skills that were very useful in the rest of my career. The rest of my career, I was in disguise. I was all over the world. I traveled. I lived all over the world. And one of the highlights of the disguise part of my career came when we finally took 10 years, but we perfected an animated mask. Now, you guys are the king of masks here, but your masks don't animate. When I see an animated face around here, it's makeup. It's not a mask, and they're very well done. But we couldn't do that. We needed something quick and fast. We were trying to invent something that you could pull into a dark garage at night, reach over, get your mask, put it on in the dark with no mirror, get it all. It would register because it only fit you. It would register at the eyes. You could feel it. You couldn't put it on wrong, and it didn't take long. You made sure it was get out of the car and walk out and meet someone, go into a bar, go into a restaurant. It was called, there are all kinds of names for it. Somewhere it's called the 15-second mask. It's not 15 seconds, but. So I showed one of these, one of the first, to my office director. I was an African-American man in the mask and gloves. I was wearing a men's suit. And I went in, I was introduced. I went to shake his hand, Frank Anderson. And the minute he shook my hand, he knew, that's not human skin. And the game was over. But based on that, we did another mask, and we did another mask, and I ended up taking it to the White House. I went to the White House and briefed the President of the United States. That's George H.W. Bush. You can barely see him on the left. That's me sitting in the chair. That's Judge Bill Webster, who was chief of CIA at the time. He had been director of FBI. I don't know who that woman was. I never figured it out. John Sununu, Bob Gates, Brent Scowcroft. So I'm briefing the president, showing him pictures of himself in disguise when he, George Bush, ran the CIA. So I'm softening him up. Everybody looks at old stuff like that and they go, oh, that was so fun. I remember that, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, well, I'm wearing something new and I'm going to take it off now and show it to you. And he said, oh, no, hold on. And he actually got up and he walked around me and he's looking and he doesn't know what he's looking for, but he knows I'm in a disguise and he can't figure it out. He sat down. He said, okay, take it off. So I did. And I'm holding it up in the air. And John Sununu, with his back to the camera, the guy in the beige, he let out this little scream. It was like a little squeak because he wasn't paying any attention. I was talking. He was doing notes because he was going to talk next. And this is what, so he's scratching something out. I saw him. And he's all about his notes. And he looked up and I'm holding my head in my hand in the Oval Office. And he was taken aback, I think is the only way to say it. So the idea here is not as banal as it may seem. So I could make a mask and I could wear it. Like, how are we going to use that? What are we going to do with that? What use is that to the CIA? This was just the beginning of something. And we refined it, again, going back to our deception and illusion specialists in Hollywood about how to use it. And one of the ways that we could use it, I don't remember if we had actually pinpointed it before we started. We could make your twin. We could make another you. We could take your face and put it on someone else, or their face and put it on you. Whatever you needed to do, we could make two of you. And the reason that Hollywood came up with that was because that's part of the magician's bag of tricks. You have the busty blonde and the red sequin thing, and she's in a box, and then two of them, she and her twin. They're not usually really twins. They're usually two big busty broads, and they're dressed alike, and the makeup is alike, and the costumes are alike, and they look alike, and you don't stop and say, hold on, stand together so I can measure you guys. Once you could have a twin, we could do remarkable things, and we did remarkable things. For instance, you could walk out of the American Embassy wherever you were, and a surveillance team could just, in Moscow, we had dedicated teams. They would wait for specific people. Team would fall in behind you. You'd walk down the street. Team is behind you. They're not really even trying to be discreet. They're just there. And you could step into a kiosk maybe to get a pack of cigarettes or pick up, I don't know, a magazine or a newspaper, and it'd be all full of lies, but still you could do that. And then you'd walk back out, and the team wouldn't usually come into a small space like that. They'd give you some room. You'd come out, you'd walk down the street, they continue down the street following you, but it's not you. They're following what we called U2. U2 is your double. You're still in the kiosk. They go off down the road. They're feeling really good. Halfway through the day, they're on their phones to their command center saying, yeah, boss, we've been with him all day, hadn't done a thing, we're good. We'll probably be done around 4 o'clock. And somewhere toward the end of that, the real you and U2 switch places again. And your surveillance team never knows anything was wrong. I mean, the clothes are the same, the hair is the same, everything's the same. So you can do it over and over. It's like robbing a bank again and again, and they never know the money's gone. That breakthrough in our disguise technology was very useful. I don't know what you did during COVID. I did a couple of things. I wrote this book, bored out of my mind. What are you going to do? I did a whole bunch of jigsaw puzzles till all my friends said, stop. Don't send us these pictures anymore. So I wrote the book, but the International Spy Museum called me and they said, they had just opened it. They had just spent like $40 million to this gleaming, gorgeous museum. If you're in D.C., go see it. But they had to shut it down because of COVID. And then they had to start laying people off like everybody did. And the Spy Museum came and they said, everyone is so depressed. So send us something to make us laugh. Send us something funny. And every day, if you'll notice, I went out on my balcony, the brick balcony, because we had a big trunk of costumes. And I put on different stuff and took my picture and sent it into the Spy Museum. It didn't stop them from firing people, but at least it made everybody feel just a little bit better. If you haven't seen this one funny thing, I would encourage you to see it. I went on a TV show called To Tell the Truth. I don't know why I went on it. My mom and I used to watch it years ago. And they said, come on back, and I did. Um, they told me, to tell the truth, that this was one of the best skits that had ever been done. You know, they try and guess who was the head of CIA, and then there are three people, and they guess the wrong one. And then the second time with the blonde wigs, I think it was like I gave birth to my son's child by surrogate or something. It was just awful. It was so funny that everybody ended up lying on the floor laughing. All the people that were guessing, the celebrities that were guessing, they were on the floor. I would have gotten on the floor, except I couldn't because I couldn't get around the table. Just if you're bored next week, just go, oh yeah, to tell the truth, she was on that show. I guarantee you, you will laugh. I didn't mean to do that. Well, I did mean to do that. International Spy Museum, which has become my third family. CIA was my second family. My family is my first family. And this is what the book looks like. Now, true confessions. I didn't bring any books. I meant to. I got permission to. I thought I talked to my book people. Evidently, I didn't follow up somewhere, but I don't think no books have shown up. I talked to Angie about this, and she said, just confess. They'll forgive you. They're on Amazon. It's getting really good reviews. I'm not walking around yelling this, but it has been optioned, so there's a good chance that you'll see this book on some screen of some size. I have no idea. I'm in a new place here. When we did Argo, and when Argo became a movie, it was so easy. It was just George Clooney calling in the middle of the night and saying, I want to buy the rights. And we said, it's yours. We didn't have to worry about anything. Now, this is a more typical scenario where the people that have optioned it have to put together the wherewithal, the director, the producer, the studio, the money. They have to make that package in order to make the thing go forward. So just the fact that it's optioned makes me very happy. How are we doing on time? Hello. Okay, I can just keep telling you stories, or we can take some questions. What do we want to do?
How about we do a combination of both? Okay?
Let's do that.
Start a story now if you would mind, and then we have a microphone here in the middle of the aisle. If you have questions, please make them short questions, and don't touch the microphone or we'll have to kill you. So it will come to you, okay? So, Jonna, you want to start on a little story? And
Well, I'll probably delve a little deeper into some of the things that we do. This idea about disguise, when do you use disguise? We would use disguise doing car pickups in foreign countries and capital cities, picking up our agent and having a car meeting. We would do them doing fake walk-ins, pretending to be a foreigner, going up to an American embassy in, say, Madrid, and saying, I want to speak to an intelligence officer to see how the Marine Guards handled that, if they'd been trained properly, if that was going okay. We would use it to infiltrate people into places that they probably couldn't be or shouldn't be. We would use them to exfiltrate people, as in Argo. We would use it to get around surveillance. We would use it to do a recruitment pitch to go into a foreign country and talk to a foreign national to work for us. And if it went badly, they wouldn't arrest us. We'd use it for an agent meeting. Those are the kinds of ways that we would use our disguises. Sir, let's do a question. Hi.
First, two pictures. The blood drive really needs blood because
Come closer to your mic.
Atlanta really needs blood right now, and the blood bank really needs donors. So if you can come, and also if there's any magicians in the audience who want to do some walk around for the people waiting in line for the to donate blood, we'd love you to come down and do some walk around. But did you ever actually do any magic with any of you, besides for disguises, with any of your stuff?
The one I've talked about, and you have to realize that what I talk about is limited in ways that are invisible to you. Like, I never really talk about what countries I was in. We've written 5 books now that the CIA has approved, so I'm within those parameters. So a story that's in those books. we were in Afghanistan. And we were worried that a Soviet was going to defect and want to come into the American embassy. That's fine. We would receive him with open arms if that had happened. But then the question was, how do we get him out of the country? And this was such an issue that we traveled there. We went to Peshawar, a colleague and I, and came up with a scenario to exfiltrate a Russian across the border. And what we were going to do is use like a hand truck, I think it's called a dolly, where you move stuff around, refrigerators or boxes or crates of things. We had the magicians in LA take a regular dolly and make some unique loads to put on that dolly. One of them was cases of bottled water that you can, clear bottled water and make it in such a way that you could put a person inside of a stack of 3 cases of bottled water. And you could wheel a Soviet defector inside that bottled water from our American embassy into some sort of transport device and get him out of there. When you got to the border, how are we going to get him across the border? That wasn't magicians. That was, we used local religion. We would put the Soviet defector in a burqa and have him sit next to a Pakistani truck driver who's usually a smuggler, and they go back and forth across the border every day. And it's against every rule of Islam and Sharia. You cannot lift a burqa. You cannot address the man's wife. You can't. So we had a method for bringing someone out of that particular border crossing, if it ever happened. And then I can't tell you if it ever happened because that's classified.
Okay, thank you. And donate blood, everybody, please.
Thank you for that.
Can I encourage you to talk?
Which
Inflatable guy.
The inflatable guy.
oh, yeah, Tony, my husband Tony creeps into these talks. I almost consciously set that aside because my sisters say I do that too much. So here it comes. I'll tell you a Tony story. My husband Tony was also, he was the master of disguise. He was a big deal disguise guy at CIA. And he and a friend were in southern India, a city outside, drinking Kingfisher beer. And it was a moment when they were talking about the need to have some sort of a dummy that we could use in a car, a fake passenger in a car is how it started out. And maybe we could switch the fake passenger with the real passenger. How would that work? And then it just kept getting more and more sophisticated. And they sent a message back to our offices. Tony said it was a rocket, the message, which compelled the office to pick this up and take it forward. They ended up making a pop-up dummy. We called it a jib, a J-I-B, a jack in the box. That's usually what I do, sir. It was a jib, a jack in the box. And they were just making this up out of whole cloth. So I think it was Tony who said, okay, we actually need some dummies, something that can collapse and go into a concealment device. And so he got these two brothers that worked for us. They were engineers, and they were nerds before nerd was a word. They were geeks before geeks was a word. If you saw these two guys, they had high water pants, and their waistline on the pants was too high, and they wore caps with ear flaps that stuck out. And I mean, we sent them to Al's Magic Shop down by the White House to buy some party dolls. This was, I didn't even know there were party dolls, but that's what. So they said, how many? We said 6. These are going to be prototypes. We're probably going to destroy a couple of them. And so we started out with inflatable rubber party dolls. We only needed the top half because we were going to put them in a briefcase. And we were going to put 2 canisters of compressed gas in the briefcase. So it's a very compact thing. And there's going to be a button. So we're going to put the briefcase on the passenger seat. Driver's driving down the street, hits the button, briefcase opens, party doll pops up, and we thought it sounded like a really great idea. Well, it was. It worked a couple of times back here. We sent it overseas to an East European country and had a contract wife go out and field test it, drive out field testing it. We had always had a problem with one piece of it, and that is that we could get her to go up, but we couldn't get her to go down. And she would turn into one of those things like at the car dealerships in a car going 40 miles an hour down the road. And they'd be trying to bat her down, and so we knew there was an issue with the going down part, but we were still focused on the going up part. So the wife hits the button, the doll pops up, the compressed gas goes, and the thing blew up. She shattered because that gas coming out of the compressed gas piece was so cold. It was ice cold. It was colder than ice. It blew up. She had a wreck. Nobody was hurt. So we went back to the drawing board, and we basically went back to L.A. and we said, well, we took this tacky piece of equipment. We said, this is what we've got. And Jamie knows the guy that we took it to, and he said, oh, no, that's wrong. And so he did this scissor mechanism that would fit in the briefcase. There was no compressed gas. He made it where the head turned. It was a little hand thing, and the driver could have the head turning. The device is up, and when you wanted it down, you just pushed it down. It was really very nice. And we used that multiple times because we could take one of those masks that we made and put it on the dummy. We could turn it into exactly the person who had been in the car who was going to be getting out. It was a very, very handy piece of equipment. And all the people I worked with wanted one for themselves, so they could go in the HOV lanes coming into work. We were strictly forbidden to make any for any personal people. One of our defectors, though, one of the CIA officers who defected to the Soviet Union, a traitor in our midst, used a homemade version of that to escape from us, and it worked. He had a plunger, like in a bathroom with that big round thing on the bottom, a plunger, a coat hanger with taped to the plunger with shoulders, a jacket on the plunger. On the head, he put the styrofoam head that we use to hold wigs in our labs, and then he put his wig, and it worked. It worked. The FBI was watching, and the FBI didn't see through it, and so I don't know about the handmade version if I would be recommending that to anybody, but don't do that. Especially don't do that on the HOV lanes because they're going to pull you over and arrest you. Question.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Brielle. We talked yesterday. My question is, with regards to women being more involved in the disguise world, did you notice if it was easier for women to get away with more simpler disguises, such as just like putting their hair down, taking glasses off and doing contacts, adding jewelry or things, or were the more complicated disguises always as effective?
I'm going to crush you with the answer. I mostly disguised men. There were very few female operations officer. That's the part of the CIA that they said we couldn't do that job. So it was mostly men. But when I did have a woman, you're absolutely right. These women, all of us in this room, we've been doing this since we were 5. We know how this works. I mean, it's changing at CIA. It's changing everywhere, not just at CIA. Women are moving forward kind of across the board. But while I was there, I never disguised a foreign agent that was a woman, and I almost always was disguising men. And the other people doing the disguises, the best of them happened to be men. So it was always a men's world at CIA. Yeah, good question though. Thank you.
That's actually the question I was going to ask, but I read your book, and I had a question. You said you were a hasher. Were you ever named?
Named. I was not.
Okay.
I was not. That's the Hash House Harriers. It's an international running club around the world. I don't know if any of you have ever run with them. Running is almost secondary in the hashes I was in. I mean, the thing is not the run. The thing is the beers after and the camaraderie and the hijinks and we did a run in Kathmandu. I've done runs where I jumped across open sewers in some countries we were in. The hash was always a delight. I was never named. I was never regular enough because I was always traveling. I love your question. Thank you. Sir.
Howdy. The HOV thing has happened by regular American citizens, by the way. Never lasts and not as sophisticated as what y'all did, of course. We've all seen plenty of movies and TV where things are fantastically distorted. My pet peeve is someone comes up with some amazing bit of technology like that, and then you never hear about it again. What's a common trope in media that is actually true?
Oh gosh, there's too much to even pick from.
A favorite one, maybe.
You mean about the CIA?
Yeah.
I always try and explain that when I worked at the CIA for 27 years, I didn't particularly know the politics of anybody that I worked with, nor did I care. It wasn't that I wasn't political, it's that it had absolutely nothing to do with what we were doing. People don't believe that today. They can't imagine an environment where that isn't just up in the air and everybody is like ragging about it. It wasn't a thing. I heard a man named Michael Lewis who's written some really great books. I heard him interviewed yesterday. I'm going to go home and play it again because what he said resonated with me. He was talking about some of these societies that he works with, finance, for instance. He said, it's not about politics where he is involved. That's one of the tropes that just bugs me more than anything else. The idea that you couldn't be working for the government, doing work that is beneficial to our entire country, and be a patriot, and not somehow take it to a political party. That's always on my mind. And I never ever talk about politics when I'm doing this stuff. I like that question. Thank you. Yes.
So what has been your most stressful moment as like a member of the CIA or like mission?
It's like on page 9 of this book. Did I say I was in Pakistan? I'm not sure if I said I was in Pakistan, but I was in Pakistan. And there was a terrorist that we were, he came to us. He was a really, really bad guy, and we knew he was. He was involved in bringing down an American commercial jet, and he said he had information about another one that was going to happen. And he knew, I wasn't sure he was telling the truth. He knew if he said that, we had to meet with him. We couldn't brush him off. We had to find out what he knew. And they set up a meeting with our chief of station in this glitzy hotel, just festooned with chandeliers and palm trees, and it was glorious. And our chief of station went there in disguise. I disguised him. I had like 3 hours to disguise him and get him to the hotel. Did. He looked really good. He wanted to disguise because he was scared to death of this terrorist, and he didn't want to be identified. He didn't want to be shot. And he said, I want all of you coming with me. There were 6 or 7 of us. We all went, everybody in some sort of disguise. And while we're waiting for this thing to happen, while we're waiting for the terrorists to show up, I'm in a rug shop. It's got 3 glass walls full of rugs. I'm down on the floor. I'm counting knots. I'm living my cover. I'm trying to look like I belong there, and I'm trying to look like I'm not American. And I'm engaging the guy, and I look up, and through the glass wall, and across the hallway, and through another glass wall into a newsstand, is that terrorist with 2 armed guards with him. They look like they were from, this is in the Middle East, mind you. They look like they were Pashtun, which is northwestern India, with turbans and guns, and they're all just. I'm down on the floor counting knots, and this terrorist, who's a little bitty guy wearing shalwar kameez, he saw me, and he figured out that I was probably with that chief of station. And this is a big deal in the book. We made eye contact, which you're not supposed to do, and it was just the scariest thing that ever happened to me. I really thought that they would shoot me. it's the equivalent of walking into the Hyatt Hotel with those guns and being armed. And nobody in that hotel was coming up to them saying, excuse me, you can't have a gun in here. No, everybody was like stepping back, and I thought, they're going to shoot me. I thought I was going to be one of those stars on the wall at CIA. I did, but he didn't. He didn't. He lowered his gaze and went out to the lobby and met with our chief of station. They arrested him the next day. That's as close as I've gotten personally to just absolute evil. That guy scared me to death. Yes, sir.
So I'm a high school teacher, and every so often I'll have a student, a junior or senior, who is interested in someday working for the CIA. And I know your path was through the side door, as you mentioned, but do you have any wisdom to share for young people today who are interested in a career in the CIA?
I do. Anybody want to take notes? Learn a language. The harder the language, the more interesting you become to them. If you can, travel. Traveling not only opens up your mind, gives you some idea of what's interesting, what you might want to pursue, but it shows just generally a curiosity to the people that you're applying to, that you're interested in the rest of the world. If you speak a language, those two things speak volumes about your character to CIA. If you have a technical specialty, it's a good thing. But you have to realize that the job opportunities at CIA are so broad. It's not just doing what I did. This technical piece of it is part of it. There's now a whole new fourth piece of CIA. This is cyber, and of course, any expertise in cyber is going to be valuable to you there. There's an analytical piece of it that's always been a big deal. Analysis is something that women actually have made good progress in CIA. You hate to stereotype, but women are really good at that kind of work. They're the ones who found Bin Laden when nobody else could find him. They've had some great success. A lot of them secret successes, but there's room there for everyone. Be good at what you do, but they're as interested in character and your openness to work and ideas, and language is the first step in. Language will. When I meet people that speak 3 and 4 languages, it's like we had people that spoke 5 and 6. And the story of Argo, in the movie you wouldn't know this, but if you read the book that we wrote, Tony took a linguist with him, and that linguist was left out of the movie. But that linguist spoke, I think he spoke 6 or 7 languages fluently. And that linguist in the Argo story found a flaw in the documents, the forged documents that had been done up in Canada. The dates were wrong. They had those 6 hostages in Argo leaving before they arrived. That would not have gone well at all. So the linguist was like, excellent. Yeah, those things will help. Yes, sir.
Hello. My question is about cyber, actually. Would you have been more excited, you think, with artificial intelligence being able to do facial recognition or being able to write all of your reports for you?
Facial recognition was part of my account. We did it with calipers. We did it with fuzzy black and white photos and that were never from the same direction, that were never, it was very hard comparing kind of apples to oranges. Is this the same person? We were chasing Carlos the Jackal for years. And we had all these things coming in. Is this Carlos the Jackal? Could this be him? Could this be him in disguise? We had a CIA man who was held hostage in Athens and eventually killed. He was our chief out there. And we saw pictures of him, and there was something going on in his neck. And we finally figured it out. They had him chained for years. They killed him. Yeah, it would be nice if we had some help with facial recognition, and I'm glad to know that it's a possibility. Now, on the other hand, then it becomes our biggest obstacle, right? When we're trying to do disguises. But I think we can navigate around that. But I don't know that for a fact, because I don't need to know anymore. Yes.
I know you said you didn't really work with makeup, but did you use it for some stuff? For disguises and stuff?
We didn't use makeup that much, and you have to get closer to the mic.
Oh, sorry.
Say it again.
I know you didn't really
Closer.
I know you didn't really use much makeup, but if you did, what techniques and stuff did you use to effectively do that?
For makeup, we were looking for makeup that would, say, cover tattoos. Tattoos are always an issue, and there are more and more and more of them. I don't know, today I see full-arm tattoos, and I'm like, I don't think there's enough makeup in that jar to cover that tattoo. But makeup is something that you rely on the person to be able to do it again. And you go back to that question about women. Women could probably, you could show them this is what we want to present, and they could mimic that. A lot of men just couldn't do that. So with men, it was more. If you come to see me and you were bald, I would give you the best hair you would never want to take it off, but you would have to. Stick-on mustaches were an issue. We can do things like we can with a sponge and the right makeup, we can do one of those scruffy beard things. And with that kind of stuff, we can turn women into men. We just didn't have enough women to work with. So not so much makeup. But every time I'm doing something where there's I was on Fareed Zakaria not long ago. The makeup people are amazing. You don't want to leave because they're doing you, and it's just like, can you do some more? And then they all want to know if there's a job for them at CIA, and I have to say, not really. No matter how skilled you are. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
This is the coolest mic stand I've ever seen.
Is that a skirt you have on, sir?
Kilt, yes.
Okay, just checking.
There are pleats. So between Moscow Rules and Argo and your new book and all the other books about OTS out there, there are techniques and devices that are described. Is there still a place for that kind of device and the in-person intelligence gathering that there was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, now that there is so much that's done online?
That question keeps coming up in a lot of different forms. But what you're talking about is what we call human intelligence, as opposed to tech int, maze int. There's so many kinds of ints. We go back to human, because the human piece of gathering intelligence is never going to be erased. It starts with a human connection, one person connecting to another. When you are recruiting someone, and I mean, it's a long process that I never did the recruitments, but I watched the results. You find someone who has access to the information that our country needs. Maybe it's a nuclear program. Where are they in the nuclear program? What are they doing with their next generation of radar? Whatever it is. And we don't just randomly go out there. We're told we need this and we need this information. You find the person who has the information. And you have to convince that person that they want to work for you, that they want to work for the Western government, that they want to work for, and that's very much part of it. Why do they want to work for us? Why do they want to do that? And then you set up an arrangement where they get what they want and we get what we want. And it's between you and me. It's a personal connection. Whether we use a technical way to pass that information, even a technical way to collect it, it's still between him and his case officer. And like typically when we recruit a person and say, if you work for us, what do you need? What do you need? And sometimes it's not money. Sometimes it's just assurance that if it goes badly, we will get you the hell out of there with your kids. And when we do that, we start making packages of passports. For that family, it'll be on a shelf as long as they work for us. And if it goes badly, we'll get them out.
Thank you.
Okay. Welcome.
Oh my gosh, that was such a great talk. Thank you so much. Please thank Jonna Mendez. That was so wonderful. I'm so sorry we don't have time for more questions, but we do have a table outside that you can talk to her further if you're willing to have a conversation.
But no books at that table. I'm sorry, that's on me.
I'm in the middle of it, Jamie. I've got this. So, as Jamie Swiss asked me to remind you, yes, we do have an Argo panel. It's 5:30, yes? Who's doing this, Jamie? Who's doing this? All right, 5:30, Argo. They're going to talk about Argo. Please, this is going to be fantastic. Hunt's House is next at 2:30, and we will see you then. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.
And you can get this
Shameless
on
plug.
Amazon.